Greg Eckerman, co-founder of EricsHouse, and I have the honor to be joined today by Jack Swan, Gary Latson, and Tom Harvey from Fentanyl Fathers. Fentanyl Fathers and EricsHouse have formed an alliance and a collaboration, and I'm going to ask Jack to tell us a little bit more about Fentanyl Fathers and about the creation of that organization. And then I want to go a little deeper with Gary and Tom, because Gary and Tom both joined EricsHouse men's groups, and it was a wonderful experience for me as a facilitator of that group to get to know them and their sons, Trevor and Tony, better, but also to get to know how the impact of their work within Fentanyl Fathers has sort of shaped them and how it plays into their personal grief journeys. So why don't we start with Jack? Jack, if you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit about your story, about Drew's story, and how that led into the creation of Fentanyl Fathers?
Sure. I'm one of the co-founders and executive director of Fentanyl Fathers, and before any of that, I'm a brother first. So my brother Drew Swan, we lost him in 2013. He came into contact with a unprescribed pill that he received in a sober living home when he was down in Florida, and like thousands of American families, we lost him because of it. Our family didn't really understand what going through the grief journey meant, especially when losing a loved one to overdose. It was really stigmatized. It didn't feel like we had many people around us who were experiencing something similar back in 2013. And in 2022, we recognized that more families were experiencing a similar loss. We had gone through about a decade of our own grief journey, kind of in silence and misery. And after looking at recent statistics on how it was affecting the youth population, we realized that we wanted to get out and start connecting with families and warning kids about the dangers of fentanyl and counterfeit pills. And that's kind of how Fentanyl Fathers began.
You know, with a tragic loss, there comes that initial period where you're just kind of shell-shocked and you don't know what to do with that grief or how to process it. But a lot of times it converts into a call to action that really becomes kind of a driving force. And it's hard to balance. It's hard to balance how you take care of yourself and how you respect your own need to grieve with really taking that action and having some impact that addresses the thing that so tragically impacted you.
Yeah, and that's kind of something that we found as we were going along. At first, it sounded great going and sharing our stories with high school kids, and we got a couple of opportunities to do that. Our first opportunity was actually in Anchorage, Alaska. But as we connected with more families who were doing the same work, we recognized that we needed to not only pour our efforts into prevention and awareness, but also into ourselves and our healing process, and that certain people, especially who have experienced more recent losses, needed resources and healing in order to continue the work, because it is heavy going in, and it can be jolting, especially for people who have just experienced this recently.
I think a lot of people have experienced that too. The kind of advocacy and prevention work you do kind of reopens wounds, and it does take a lot out of you. One of the things I love about the Fentanyl Fathers approach is that you make it very personal. You tell their stories, you say the names of the people that you've lost, and I think that makes it accessible and relatable to people. And I like to switch to Tom for a little bit, because that reminds me, Tom just shared something that they've done in honor of his son, Tony. And so, Tom, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your story and Tony's story, and how that led you to Fentanyl Fathers and then ultimately to the EricsHouse group.
Sure, great. Be happy to. Thank you. Really pleased to have this opportunity. My name is Tom Harvey. My experience doesn't come from use, but from loss. Our son Tony lost his life on August 13th, 2024, from his addiction to drugs. You can see some of these pictures from Tony.
Yeah, thank you.
We adopted Tony when he was 17 months old. He was the baby of the family, our only boy, and from the very beginning, he filled our home with energy, curiosity, and love. He was bright, funny, tender-hearted, a beautiful soul who felt everything deeply. There was so much more to Tony than his addiction to drugs, and that's what I have to keep remembering. But life isn't always simple, and neither was Tony's journey. Tony went away to college, and he got in with the wrong crowd, and that's when his drug use started. And he fought up and down, in and out of trouble with the law, in and out of different drugs for 17 years. And he was 37 when he died. I mean, I can't describe the hole that you feel, that each of us has felt. And the network that we've been privileged to be part of in learning about others who have had loss. And EricsHouse has been a big part of it in bringing people together to share the loss and how they deal with grief and how they can move forward. For me, it was hard to move forward. I was able to realize I couldn't do this by myself. And I just thought online and started looking who was doing what. I found Food the Father. And they brought me in. They kind of stood me up, shook me off, and gave me other things to focus on. And they introduced me to EricsHouse and said, I remember Greg saying, Tom, you ought to try this. And so I did. And I had the pleasure of meeting Gary on there and 4 other folks who had suffered terrible loss. And for 2 months, we shared, we learned. And that's what my journey has been. So I've been focusing with Fentanyl Fathers on the school part, telling our story. The EricsHouse experience for me was, I can't tell you how grateful I am, because it got me to the point that I could recognize that grief is just love with nowhere to go. So you got to find a place to take it. And taking it to others who you can help is how I've tried to be part of that. I've liked Fentanyl Fathers in particular because they're very active. They've been very aggressive on the anti-fentanyl activity. So they're doing more than giving presentations. They're actually changing laws.
Talk briefly about the billboards with,
I don't know if you can see that.
If you could hold it up a little higher.
There you
go. We can see that it's a billboard at least. But
all right, that is a billboard. And it's a very simple message. It says, Tony Harvey died on August 13th, 2024. One pill can kill, don't risk it. And it's sponsored by Fentanyl Fathers. So we're going to have that out at the end of the month on 10 different locations throughout Virginia. I found a billboard company, Lamar, that's been very accommodating and actually volunteering some billboard space to add to our impact. So I'm hoping that maybe we can get this out in other states where people want to sponsor these with their own children so that they can get this continuing message and get a drumbeat going.
Thank you, Tom. One of the things that has really draws me to Fentanyl Fathers is the success that y'all have had in sort of building alliances. And I want to come back around to that and talk about the Angel Army concept and where you all see that going. But before we do that, let's I'd like to hear from Gary. And Gary, if you wouldn't mind telling us about your son Trevor's story and how that's played into your journey and your experiences, both with Fentanyl Fathers and EricsHouse.
Okay. I'm Gary Latson. I'm a retired doctor, anesthesiologist, and in 2022, I lost my dear son, Trevor. He was 37. He was a computer software engineer, very accomplished, but all throughout his life, since the age of about 12, he used and abused different substances, sometimes in a way that didn't cause him trouble, but occasionally in ways that caused him a lot of trouble. But he was very resilient. I used to say that the song that reminded me of him most was the um, song that says, "I get knocked down, but I get up again. Nobody's going to hold me down," because he had legal troubles and accidents and things that um, you know put him at you know down, but he was very resilient. He would come back from that, pull his life together, stay out of trouble. He ended up getting a job with Raytheon, had a security clearance, did great things, accomplished great things, but intermittently he would you know sink back into drug use and have problems. And that was the beginning of one of the most painful periods in my entire life. Um, Struggled, just eventually ended up retiring early from my job because I just didn't have the heart to keep going, and the stress and everything. And eventually founded a nonprofit on my own called Candles in the Wind Foundation, with the goal of addressing the substance use epidemic in any way possible. And one of my things I tried to do was get invited into schools to talk, but I had no luck because I was a lone person with a small foundation. And then I got involved. I discovered Fentanyl Fathers and got involved with them, and they had an opportunity for me to go out and talk to 8 middle schools in 1 week in Miami. And that was one of the most uh, fulfilling experiences I've ever had. At first I was really nervous. I didn't know if I'd be able to do this, but they provided all the materials. They coached me through it, um, made it possible, and made it, I won't say easy, but made it relatively easy to do. And I became a fan of Fentanyl Fathers after that, and I've spoken to about 15 schools now. Um, and it's given me a sense of purpose, and that's one of the things in the grief journey that we all need.
That first time experience of telling your story to a group of people that you don't know, but you put yourself in that situation. It's sort of the common experience in our groups. Personally, I think it's a tremendous act of courage. The first time that you do that, it is daunting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
and transformative. Clearly, so many people drawn to the Fentanyl Fathers mission, who feel that impulse. I've got to do something with this. I need to, try to help somebody else avoid this same tragedy. I think I just sort of envision, especially for men, that there may be a tendency to kind of set aside their own grief to focus on that mission, because All Fathers does a really good job of preparing you, giving you, an approach and sort of setting the stage to be able to do that. So for a lot of guys, members of Fentanyl Fathers who put themselves in that position, they feel comfortable. They know how to do that. The script is written. There's a stage. There's a platform to be able to get the message across. Unlike dealing with their personal grief, because nobody gives us that script. I'm always curious about your first experience coming into the EricsHouse men's group, and
EricsHouse was a tremendous benefit for me, because it provided a forum where I could talk with other people that had experienced similar losses. One of the special pains about losing your child to substance abuse or suicide is that other people they try to understand, but if they haven't experienced a similar loss, there's really no way they can understand.
Yeah.
And honestly, I found that they sort of get tired of hearing the story. And there's also that reluctance to share the story of your son that was in trouble and did bad things,
Right.
with colleagues and people that aren't real close friends and that kind of thing. And EricsHouse provided a forum where I could talk to people like Tom and you and others and Matthew, and um, express the grief that I felt in a and get feedback from others that were feeling the same thing. And that was tremendously helpful.
I know that a lot of men feel that same sort of barrier, that same sort of hurdle. We grow up with a lifetime of expectations that we're just supposed to kind of suck it up and move on, that we're supposed to figure out how to do this on our own. But, I appreciate hearing your stories, because I think the word needs to get out. I don't think anybody can do this alone. When something like this comes into your life, it is overwhelming, and everybody deserves to find that safe space to be able to go into some pretty raw emotions and know that they're being heard, and not feel like anybody's trying to fix them or hurry them along. So I just wanted to say to both Gary and Tom, I really enjoyed having you in our men's group and the contributions that you made. It was really beautiful to watch that group kind of coalesce and unfold. So I appreciate that. I'm so grateful. I'd like to shift a little bit, because I mentioned the idea that, or the appeal that I find in Fentanyl Fathers' effectiveness in sort of building coalitions or alliances with other organizations. And we've been invited to join in Angel Army. And Jack, I wonder if you could just give us a little bit more background on that, and where you see your efforts going.
So proud to know these two guys and to hear how the mission has impacted their lives. I mean, every time that I share my brother's story on stage, I know the first time was really hard, but it was also really cool, because I, for the first time, saw that losing my brother was impacting another life and potentially saving another life. And you'll never know how many lives you saved, or how many lives were directly impacted, or how many decisions down the road were directly impacted by your story. But it's healing. There's some healing in that. So really, through Angel Army, we formed Angel Army with Victoria's Voice Foundation and EricsHouse. We saw, all these parents wanting to find purpose through their grief. We all wanted to empower them to raise awareness, drive their missions forward. They can take our presentation and give the presentation, highlighting their organization or local coalitions that they're working with and local partnerships. I mean, people don't all need to work in silos.
It feels like, there's an additive effect if you can pull more people into to sort of align their efforts and increase the impact. But I don't think it is additive. I think there's a multiplying effect that really makes that impact so much greater than just the addition of those separate efforts. I view whatever healing means for those of us in grief, whatever that means, because the answer is always individual. It includes that search for meaning and purpose. It includes building some foundation for hope in something better in the future. And I think you guys really do a tremendous job of that. I am so grateful that you've made the time and shared your hearts and your stories and your sons and brothers' stories and um, you know, been able to put that out into the world to make a difference and to hopefully help other people avoid the same kind of tragedies that have impacted you. If anybody'd like to share any last thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, Greg, I'll say those. First of all, about Angel Army.
Yeah.
So Angel Army, the anticipation is everyone invited to participate and be part of this. And we all have a responsibility to include those watching this little segment to tell our kids what the dangers are and for parents and teachers to understand those and not be afraid to have those conversations early so that the kids really can make their own decisions, but smart decisions. Just don't try this stuff. Don't risk it.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah. To add to what Tom said, so many people think of substance use disorder and alcoholism as a disease of young adulthood. In reality, it's a disease that starts usually in the early teens, often as early as 12 or 13. And then it gradually gets worse and worse. And so getting to middle schools and high schools, um, and reaching the kids emotionally, is why I think Fentanyl Fathers is so effective. I tell my audience, I don't want you to listen with your head. I want you to listen with your heart, because I'm here talking to you from my heart. And the stories that we tell get their emotional attention, and that enables them to absorb the important message, which is A, that this is really dangerous, and B, that it really affects an entire family, an entire school. The grief and sadness that ripples through society from substance use overdoses is incalculable.
I'm excited to see where this alliance in Angel Army goes and what we can do together.
If you're interested in connecting with Angel Army, you can go to angelarmy.com and just fill out the contact form.
The theme for this Hope in the House is postvention is prevention. Postvention, the care of people in grief who've suffered tragic loss, really is a preventative action. Many people try to self-medicate their way out of their grief because it's so overwhelming, so overpowering that they don't know what else to do with it. But even more than that, the pathway to hope, finding meaning and purpose and moving forward in your lives has an impact on the world around you. Just like each of these losses gets magnified, the ripple effect through the family and friends and coworkers and all of that, the positive actions we take, I think, similarly ripple out through our society. And I think we all take hope in that. Thank you all so much for making the time to be with us today. I really appreciate your insights and your willingness to share your stories. And I look forward to your future.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
Thanks for putting it together and giving us an opportunity to share our thoughts.